Hello, my name is Akhil Reni. I'm the Chief Technology Officer and co-founder at Strobes. Uh, we are a continuous threat exposure management company. Strobes CTEM enables company to integrate with vulnerability scanning tools, aggregate them, correlate them, and prioritize them accordingly. Today, I'm going to give you a walkthrough of our platform end to end. But what I'll do is, as a part of this walkthrough, I'll use the first 5 minutes to explain about the technical aspects of the platform, how it works, and so forth. And later, the rest of the 25 minutes, I'll use it for the technical nitty-gritties on how to configure the platform and how can you make most of it, right? So what you're looking at right now on the screen is the Strobes CTEM platform. And this is the homepage that all of our customers get to see when they log into the platform as such. So Strobes CTEM, the way it works is you have to configure some input sources and output sources to get in the asset and vulnerability related data. So if you scroll down a bit, in the middle section, we have something called suggested workflows. So suggested workflows is a way to get in assets and vulnerabilities onto the platform as such. Over here, we have different types of integrations and workflows that you can set up. So over here, you can see on the screen that we have continuous SCN SBOM, continuous DAST, continuous cloud security, continuous container security, and so forth. But if I explore more workflow options, we have like about 120 integrations that you can integrate with. Now, integrations are of different types. Like you can integrate dynamic application scanners, static application scanners, infrastructure scanners, report importing tools, issue tracking tools like Jira, Azure repos, ServiceNow, and so forth. Then we have asset inventory tools, notification tools, DevOps tools, cloud scanners, container scanners, and so forth. Now, what happens is when you set up these kind of integrations, they become an input source for the Strobes. So you can get in assets and vulnerabilities from all these sources as such. So what I'll do is I'll just go back. And now that we know that we have to set up these integrations, once you set up these integrations, workflows get created and data comes into Strobes as such. So this data can be, correlated, aggregated, and prioritized. And because of that, you will see different statistics available on the platform as such. To the right, you can see that how many of those vulnerabilities have been violating your organization SLA policies. And if you scroll down a bit, you get to see how many of those issues have been patched, how many of those are 0 days and so forth. The use case is very simple over here. You have like Qualys, Tenable, and let's say you have AppScan, HCL tools, Burpseed, and so forth. You can configure all those tools as input source for the platform. And then you can set up your organization SLA policies. You can set up some threat intelligence and whatnot. And the platform will do its magic by correlating the threat intelligence data, the SAST, DAST infrastructure data into one. And the end thing that you'll see on the platform is how many vulnerabilities are violating SLAs, how many are patched, how many are 0 days, and many more insights, which I'll show when I get into the technical nitty-gritties as such. But one key aspect that I really want to show you guys is that once you configure the platforms, like you can see over to the left, you have different integrations set up in this particular instance, like Strobes SCA, DAST, SAST, Veracode, SemGrep, SNCC, and many more tools. Now, each of these tools will input like findings, then findings resolved, like how many findings have been fixed, patched, and then assets, how many assets have been imported. And then within all these vulnerabilities, using threat intelligence, the platform predicts how many of those vulnerabilities are actually, patchable or need a patch as such, right? So if you look at the vulnerability count over here, it says about 494 vulnerabilities. This can be in variety of assets, like critical assets, crown jewel assets, whatnot. And then if you look at the priority score to the right, you will see that less than 1% of the vulnerabilities need a patch. Over here, it's 0, but depends from a vulnerability scanning source to source. And now, if you go down a bit, you have the overall data for the entire assets and also the vulnerabilities as such. So if you look at the asset reduction data over here, so you have the total asset count, which talks about how many assets have been ingested. Again, it can be from various input sources like SaaS, DAST, network, infrastructure, and so forth. And then we have a total asset count of 3.87K vulnerabilities over here. Within those 3.87K vulnerabilities, we have about 180 crown jewels. Over here, crown jewels generally mean anything that has PI information, which is in scope with your PCI, DSS, HIPAA, or any kind of compliance kind of thing. And the business impact is really high. And then you have about 53 assets that actually need the, patching, or you have to take a look at it, right? So even within your organization, you might be having a large number of assets. That does not mean that all these assets need a patching as such. Since Strobes use that intelligence, like threat intelligence, correlation and, aggregation as such, it is able to let you know what are the specific vulnerabilities or assets that you have to patch, right? Likewise, to the right, you have this finding reduction data. Again, provides you a great insight and a great value as such. So over here, you have about total findings of about 300K vulnerabilities. But within those 300K vulnerabilities, you have about 14,000 vulnerabilities that have a CVSS score greater than 9. If you just look at the industry standard, everyone just runs behind CVSS scoring and patches the vulnerabilities in a chaos. But then the platform does its magic and lets you know what are the vulnerabilities that you have to patch first, which is about high priority issues, which are about 241 as such. So this is how the platform works on a very high level. Now, to come down to this metrics, to utilize the platform to its extremes level, you have to configure many things and you have to set them in auto mode. Now, the rest of the 20 minutes, what I'll do is I'll take up a use case and we'll explain you how you can configure this platform along with some automation rules, reporting, and much more, and make the most of it along with some AI agents, vertical agents, and so forth, and get down to that minimized level of vulnerabilities, or the vulnerabilities that you have to patch first as such, right? From a technical standpoint, the platform has to be configured in a certain way, whether it can be automation, whether it can be reporting, and so much more. And that's how you can leverage the full power of Strobes. So to the left, we have different modules available that you can use within Strobes. Like we have dashboards and reporting, we have asset management, we have finding management, we have engagement management, we have workbooks, connectors, automation, ticketing, OSS, and many more. What I'll do is, in order to configure the platform, everyone starts with the connectors page as such. So let me go into the connectors page and give you a walkthrough about what are all the integrations available on the platform as well. So if you look at the left, we have different types of integrations available on the platform, like dynamic application scanners, DAST. Again, DAST can be a mix of open source, commercial, those kind of tools. We have Veracore DAST, we have BurbSeat, we have App Sentinel, Strobes API Security, HackerOne, 45, and many more tools. Likewise, we have static application scanners like Snyk, CodeQL, Dependabot, SemGrep, and many more commercial and open source tools as well. Likewise, we can integrate with infrastructure and network scans like Rapid7, Nessus, Tenable, Qualys, Tanium, and much more. Again, over here, you can see it's a combination of both commercial as well as open source. Then we have report importing tools. If you have data in format of CSV, Excel, JSON, you can upload those data as well. And whatever I've shown you so far are kind of input sources to the platform. Likewise, you can configure output sources. Like, for example, whatever findings are coming onto the platform, you want to send it across to Jira, ServiceNow, those kind of tools. We have integrations with those. Then we have asset inventory tools, wherein if you want to get assets from a CMDB tool or a cloud provider, we have integrations with those as well. Likewise, we have notification tool integrations. If you're on Slack, if you're on MS Teams, or you're on email, you're on SIM tools, you can configure these notification tools and you will get the logs as well as notifications right on those platforms as well. Then we also solve ASPM use cases. So if you have DevOps integrations and DevOps connectors, you can connect with those tools as well. Then we have cloud scanners like CSPM, cloud security tools like Prisma Cloud, Orca, Wiz, CloudSploit, and much more. Then we have also integrations with container scanners, asset discovery tools, and much more. So like you can see on the screen, as a platform, we are very tool agnostic. We integrate with all sorts of tools as such. And we as a platform, we have SLAs to also build new integrations. Whenever a customer comes to us, asks us for any new integration, assuming that the connector has great APIs in place, good APIs in place, and we we make them available within 12 to 15 days on the platform as such, right? So that's how we can decrease the lead time for POCs, trials, and much more. So now setting up these scanning tools is fairly simple. Let me set up an input source, let's say Rapid7 for this example. I want to configure it on a daily basis to ingest assets and vulnerabilities onto the platform as such. All I have to do is click on Rapid7, and I have to click on Add New Workflow, and then I'll just give a configuration name as such, configuration sync, and then I have to provide some API credentials for that platform as well. So over here, API credentials is fairly simple. Like what's the API key, what's the name, what's the region for the Rapid7 host. Once I provide that information, I have some credentials already configured. I click on them, click on next, and then in the next step, I have different options that I have to configure. So sites are the asset groups coming from the Rapid7 tool. I have to select those. And then in the next step, I have to select what I want to do with, let's say, duplicate assets as such. So in this case, I just want to merge them. And if yes, it's based on MAC address, hostname, and IP. Likewise, I have other options like smart closure, wherein the platform intelligently looks at multiple data sources and automatically closes the issue if it believes it's patched. And then I have something called how frequently you want to run a sync. So I don't have to go to the platform and just click on sync all the time. All I have to do is configure it on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and the sync will be configured. And in the next step, I can also configure the tracking and notification settings if needed. And once I do that, I can just click on submit and the configuration will be available for you. So now that I, set up all the tools, likewise, I can set up my SAST tools, DAST tools, network tools, cloud security posture management tools, and whatnot. I'll be getting some data onto the platform as such. So now if I navigate to my asset management page, this is your comprehensive asset inventory that is available for you. You will see that all the assets are coming onto the platform as such. Over here, we have some quick metrics. How many total number of assets have been ingested onto the platform? How many of those assets have a risk score greater than 90? What's the total risk volume for all these assets? And then likewise, what's the risk volume for the private assets as such? And if you look to the left, we have something called views that we use it within Strobes. Views are like your business groups or group of assets as such. So you can have it in the folder format. You can have a view saved and so forth. And this view is just a combination of filters and fields that we use on the platform as such. So over here to the left, you have something called business unit. Again, within business unit, you have engineering assets, finance assets. And if I go back, I have, compliance group, HIPAA assets, PCI DSS assets, SOC 2 assets. So if I select any of this view, like for example, I clicked on HIPAA assets, a filter is being applied saying HIPAA, and then I'll get to know all the assets that are within the scope of HIPAA as such, right? Likewise, if I want to know what are all the PCI DSS assets, I get to see that. Over here, most of our customers are using this feature to leverage, large business teams, engineering teams, and so forth, enable them to organize their, asset management and asset inventory in a very powerful way as such. Now, if I go back to my asset screen, to my all assets page, you will see the list of all the assets available on the platform. Now, each of these assets have asset names, risk scoring, business sensitivity, exposure, asset type, cloud provider, package, IP address, MAC address, and many more fields. And let's say this organization is very specific to a certain industry. We can also create custom fields like business unit, data classification, compliance requirements, system owners, business impact, and so forth. Just like in spreadsheet, you can bring in as many columns as possible onto Strobes, and you can classify the assets, as per your need as well. So this is with respect to the asset inventory page, and all these assets can be managed within Strobes. You can bulk update them. You can, change the sensitivity. You can assign those assets to users and much more. And you can sync back these assets into a CMDB tool if needed. And all the columns within CMDB can also be synced within Strobes as such. Now, one of the things that I really love about Strobes is that you have the ability to create customized fields. Like you can see over here, we have business unit, data classification, compliance requirements, system owner, business impact, and so forth. And now all these fields can be brought into the platform from a tool like CMDB. But then you can also use AI systems or workflows within Strobes to, populate those fields as well, right? I'll show in a while like how the AI features can be leveraged to fill these things. But now I would like to move on to, let's say, the vulnerability page and show you how you can get down to the high priority vulnerabilities and take some actions as well. So now if I go back to the left navigation, I'll see that I have a findings page. I can just click on it and I'll go to my entire vulnerability management screen. Over here, you will see all the vulnerabilities coming from different sources available at one single place. Very similar to our asset management page, you have the views to the left, again, a group of vulnerabilities. In between, you have the table of all the vulnerabilities. And above, you have some quick insights about the vulnerability counts, how many vulnerabilities have been failing the SLAs, exploitable findings, and so forth. Let me give you a quick example over here. So you have about 300K vulnerabilities that have been ingested from different sources, right? But within those 300K vulnerabilities, about just 241 vulnerabilities are very high priority for your organization as such. So that is the value that Strobes provides. And likewise, your organization might be having different SLA requirements, right? So you have a count about how many vulnerabilities are compliant and non-compliant. So you get to see the details about it. And then since Strobes also integrates with threat intelligence tools, it gives you a total count of how many vulnerabilities are exploitable as such. Again, if I go down a bit, you have these entire views that are beautifully organized in terms of folders, views, and so forth. So you can click on any of these, let's say business fields or code fixes. I want to know, cloud security issues, infrastructure issues, and whatnot. I can just organize all my vulnerabilities into those beautiful views and groups. And if I go back to all findings, I'll see all the fields that are available for the vulnerabilities as such. So now, when we configure these connectors, different information is ingested onto the platform. Like, for example, we have titles, we have status, severity, priority, exploitability, 0 days, affected assets, trend, description, reported on, and many more fields can be ingested onto the platform. All this meta information can come back from any source, and we do not keep any limitation as such. And just like assets, you can have as many fields ingested and created. So over here, I have something called custom fields. Again, root cause analysis, fix complexity, external dependency, test status, regulatory failure, mitigation type, and so forth. Now, as an organization, you will have your own continuous threat exposure practices or vulnerability management practices, and these fields can change accordingly. Now, of course, you need someone looking at all these vulnerabilities and changing them on a time-to-time basis. But again, using Strobes and its AI features, all these fields can be automatically populated as well. And then I'll go back to it in a while. But let me explain you about the prioritization score within the platform as such. Now, if you look at all these vulnerabilities, they have like different severities. They are in different types of assets. Some of the assets can be critical to your organization. Some of them can be just static websites, not having a lot of critical information as such. So now patching all those vulnerabilities just based on a CVSS score is not a good thing, right? So what Strobes does is it creates this priority score, which is anywhere between 1 and 999. And it's based on threat intelligence data, asset context, and so forth. So if I go back to my views and I click on suggested views over here, I have something called high prioritized findings as such. If I click on this, a filter will be applied saying prioritization score greater than 900. And I'll have all the vulnerabilities that are very critical to my organization, right? All these vulnerabilities will have different states, obviously. You can change the state to accepted risk, resolved, whatnot. The entire vulnerability lifecycle is in the hands of the user itself. And then we have all these vulnerabilities that are exploitable, 0 days, and so forth. You can click on any of this vulnerability, and you can click on why this prioritization score, and you will get the drill down about why this prioritization score has been calculated for this specific vulnerability as such. So you have the CVSS scoring, which is the base score that we take into consideration. But then we also take into consideration if it has a 0 day, what's the category of the vulnerability? Is it like code execution, cross-site scripting, and whatnot? Exploit probability, exploit availability, privilege escalation, malware available, and many more fields. Based on this data, we give back to the customer, a priority score anywhere between 1 and 999. And based on it, they can take actions like send it to a Jira dashboard for patching, send it to a Slack for a notification, send it to an email, and much more things. All these things can also be very automated. We can write some automation rules to send back these vulnerabilities as such. So now I've explained to you about how you can set up connectors, how you can set up assets, findings, how you can look at your assets and findings and so forth. Now let me explain you a use case that we are solving for most of our customers. So vulnerability management, like I said earlier, is very customized when it comes to organization. Everyone has a different approach to it. So what you can do in Strobes is you can create an entire framework and automate it, right? So let's say I have this AppMe organization which uses, does vulnerability management in a certain way, wherein all the findings that they have reported, they want to add information like root cause analysis, fixed complexity, dependencies, and so forth. Now, all this data does not come from the vulnerability scanning tools, right? Your Qualys, your Tenable does not provide this information. Someone has to go back to a spreadsheet and, has to manage these vulnerabilities. So what you do in Strobes is you can write complex automation rules and vertical agents like AI agents that can take care of this job very easily. So let me explain you how. So if you go to settings, we have something called custom fields, and these custom fields can change for organization to organization. Today, we have many customers in different industries, and we are solving different use cases using these features as such. So you have assets custom fields. Again, over here, I created business unit, data classification, compliance requirements, system owner, business impact, and so forth. All these fields are a combination of select, multi-select. You can have different information. For example, if I just look at compliance requirements, I have like SOC 2, PCI DSS, HIPAA, and so forth. Likewise, from a findings perspective, I have something called root cause analysis, a custom field I created, fixed complexity, external dependencies, test status, regulatory failure, mitigation type, and so forth. Now, both of these fields have been tagged along with assets and vulnerabilities. Now comes the fun part, right? So if you go to the automation feature within Strobes, you can literally create your on-demand workforce within this particular space, right? So going back a bit, every organization currently faces a cybersecurity, workforce challenge. You do not have enough resources to automate vulnerability management as such. So what we do on Strobes is we leverage large language models and, create it in a way that we build vertical agents that can take action on your data as such. So over here, I have some, vertical agents which have been configured to do certain level of jobs. So if I click on read more for all of these, you have Robert, Virat, Sam, Tina, and they have been instructed to do some actions. So Robert is a security solutions architect who will be able to, give you details on the mitigation strategy and so forth. And then we have Virat, who's a business risk analyst, who will be able to let you know about your business impact for any of those vulnerabilities. And then we have Sam, who's a vulnerability management analyst, will explain you about fixed complexity and so forth. And then we have Tina, who is doing compliance risk work and stuff. Now, what happens is I can set up these automations in a way that I click on new automation, I select agent LLM, click on continue, give an agent name. Let's say I'm configuring Akhil as an agent, and then I can select models. Over here, we have different types of models that we support. OpenAI models like GPT-4, or you can even use our Strobes Pulse Lite model, which is like a fine-tuned Llama model just for the specific tasks. For in this case, I just used GPT-4o. I'll select the credentials that I want to configure with, and then I'll select findings. I want all these actions to be performed on findings. Click on I'll have multiple agents to perform actions. Then I'll provide some instructions. So I want to create a vulnerability management analyst role within my organization. I create that. I'll give instructions like, work on adding comments for vulnerabilities with mitigation steps. And I can provide many more instructions. The agent would be able to interact with the entire features within Strobes. And I can also select when the agent has to be triggered. So I want to trigger it whenever a findings has been created. And we have many more hooks that you can configure. and then on what vulnerability information it should take action. So you can also mention some filters and stuff. So once I do that, all these agents will be configured and they will start taking actions on all your imported data. Like for example, over here, Tina has been configured. And if you look at the logs, Tina has taken some actions and automatically changed, custom fields for all these data as such. For example, over here, I have a vulnerability called detected GCP API key. You have some description about it. And then Virat, Tina, and so forth have taken some actions. They've also dropped some comments about it. So for example, Tina has, automatically added some flags with respect to compliance, and Virat has, potentially added some custom field for business impact as well. So if I go down a bit, you'll see that, regulatory failure, you have that information, and whatever custom fields these tools, set up, you will get all that information available on the platform. Again, if I go back to agents, all these, agents have taken certain level of actions. Again, Sam has taken some actions with respect to external dependencies. So it'll be able to let you know, if this particular vulnerability needs a third-party API change or just a moderate change or a high change or whatever it is. Likewise, Robert will able to say that, hey, for this specific vulnerability, it requires a configuration change, compensating control, process change, and whatnot. So every agent is configured in a certain way, and they will take some actions and enrich these assets and vulnerabilities with information relevant to the organization as such. Likewise, we have general actions as well available on the platform, wherein you can set up automation rules to send out notifications to Slack, Jira, and so forth. Again, I just love this feature like on how you can set up some automation rules to automate your day-to-day job. For example, if I want to send out notifications to Slack on a regular basis, I can create an automation rule over here. I just click on edit. You have this configuration saying send notification to Slack. Whenever a finding is created, this thing will get configured. I have some thing called pipelines, which is basically a Python scripts, wherein you can customize the Slack message, you can customize the fields that you want to extract from a finding and so forth. And then if you scroll down a bit, you have this entire information about where to send the notification, which is the Slack hook, and the entire message template that you want to send. It's that simple. So you can configure as many automation and rules as possible to send out vulnerability tickets to Jira or Slack, and we have a two-way sync with Jira. So whatever changes in Jira will also be reflected back on the platform as such. So this is very fun, right? So you can have on-demand workflows, you can set up things, and you can sync data between tools, and you can automatically take actions on all these vulnerabilities and so forth. And that's where the Strobes power lies. You can have this entire continuous threat exposure happening on your platform. But from your organization standpoint, every organization can be different, but Strobes can adopt to it using all its amazing features as such. Now, what I'll do is, now that we configured all these different tools, I'll show you what kind of beautiful reports that you can generate within Strobes as such, right? So over here, we have something called dashboards module, wherein you can create your own dashboards and report, applicable for your organization. Over here, we have some default dashboards or default reporting that we give to our customers. But apart from that, like I said earlier, customers can create their own dashboard and their own reporting as well. So let me start with a quick view into the risk summary dashboard, wherein we have some important statistics and graphs explaining about how the organization is doing from the risk summary standpoint, what's the risk scoring, and so forth. Again, since Strobes has the entire historical data, it will be able to let you know at every single point of time how you're doing from a security posture standpoint, right? So we have this risk timeline graph, which talks about what's your risk of your organization on a quarterly basis. Again, since you're importing data from different tools like Qualys, Tenable, many other tools, everyone has a different risk scoring mechanism. But what Strobes does beautifully is it'll normalize all the data, and according to your organization need, it'll give the risk timeline as such, or risk scoring, I would say. And then we have the overall risk scorecard. Then we have the total vulnerability count. Then we have how many code executions are there in your organization, how many are denial of service, how many are SL issues, findings trend by priority, how much data is coming onto the platform on a regular basis, and how much of the data actually needs a patch and so forth. Likewise, if you scroll down a bit, you have data like, findings by trend on a year-by-year basis, findings and private facing assets versus public facing assets, findings by state, findings by CVSS mapping, top 10 CVEs, findings by operating system, and many more. But if you go back a bit, I was talking about a use case wherein organizations can have customized vulnerability management practices and the data can change time to time, right? So Strobes allows you to create, customized dashboards as well. So over here, I created a dashboard called CISO dashboard, and this is very specific to this organization. Like I said earlier, they have some fields like data classification, compliance requirements, and whatnot. So this dashboard has been created for them. So over here, you can see that, how many of those findings are critical findings open for more than 90 days. You can view the results as well. And then assets by data classification, restricted, confidential, public, internal, and so forth. Then we have assets by compliance requirements, like what falls under ISO, GDPR, PCI, HIPAA, SOC 2. And then you have asset owners, assets by asset owners. And then we have assets by data classification, like how many are confidential, internal, public, or restricted. And then we have fixed complexity, like how many of these findings require a simple fix, complex solution, architecture change, moderate change, and so forth. And again, vulnerability counts with respect to different compliance, business impact, and so forth. And again, you can customize this dashboard extremely. You can bring in whatever metric that you want onto the dashboard. And these dashboards can be given access controls or set up access controls wherein only a CISO can look at it or only the right stakeholders can look at it and so forth. So you can drag and drop different cards and charts. You can also create a widget right from the scratch by giving a widget title and some description about it. And you can also select what module you want to interact with, like an asset or a finding. And then you can select the type of widget that you want to create. Like you can create a KPI chart, filter, line graph, simple graph, pie chart, donut, stat bar, sparkline, and so forth. So everything is very customizable in needs with anyone's vulnerability management practice. And you can take actions very quickly based on, these reports as such, right? So the platform is very, flexible. The platform can be customized right from using, agentic AIs, custom fields, reporting, and so forth. So I believe Strobes is one of the very few platforms out there which is doing this thing, wherein we are able to solve any sort of use case in any industry as such. So this is how Strobes platform works. And when it comes to deployment mode, we are on cloud. It's a SaaS platform. We are in multiple regions. It's multi-tenant. We are in the US region. We are in the European region. We are in the Indian region, and so forth. And the platform is entirely multi-tenant. You can, every organization will get their own URL, and their data is very well segregated from other organizations as such. And likewise, you can also have an on-premise version of Strobes, wherein it can be deployed on your data center or on your cloud. And, it can also be a very air-gapped system as well. So Strobes has that flexibility to make it happen. From a compliance and a security standpoint, we are SOC 2 Type 2 certified for almost last 2 years. We take our security very seriously. We do our vulnerability scans and security runs every now and then. And the platform is enterprise ready with all the single sign-on features, SAML features, those kind of things as well. I'm really excited to meet customers from different industries who are trying to solve vulnerability management and continuous threat exposure management. Thanks for the opportunity. I hope you loved the demo. If in case you loved the demo, please reach out to us on strobes.co. Thanks and bye.